television feel.
There we go. Okay, here we go. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to the Texas virtual Q&A for Pahokee. My name is Jessica Green. I am the artistic director of the Houston Cinema Arts Society. Hi, me. Just want to say hello to everybody and say that we all hope everybody is okay under these incredible circumstances. And, we hope you're all faring okay and doing okay. And thank you so much for joining us. Also want to say this program is in partnership with the Austin Film Society, the Violet Crown Cinema in Austin also, yay, and the Texas Theater in Dallas, yay, and also the Rice Cinema in Houston, which is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. Happy birthday, Rice Cinema, happy 50. So this is really a Texas-wide virtual program for Pahokee. We've got Austin in the house, we've got Houston in the house, we've got Dallas in the house. Go Texas. And also thank you to Monument Releasing, the distributor of this incredible film, which you can still watch after this virtual Q&A with the directors. It is still available, and there is information right there on the YouTube page that will direct you to purchasing the film to watch. So if you're joining us and you haven't already watched it, feel free to watch it after the conversation. That's fine too. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our incredible directors of Pahokee. First joining us is Ivete Lucas, who was born in Brazil and started her career in Mexico and now lives in the United States. Her short documentary, The Send-Off, co-directed with her partner, Patrick Bresnan, who's also on this Q&A, premiered at Sundance in 2016 and won jury awards at South by Southwest, AFI, and the San Francisco International Film Festival. Skip Day, which she directed and produced in May, Skip Day, which she directed and produced in May 2018. So those are two projects. And the duo was named among Filmmaker Magazine's 25 New Faces of Independent Film in 2016. So that is Ivete Lucas. And then also joining us is Patrick, who is a visual artist and filmmaker. And after a formative period working for prominent mission school artists Barry McGee and Claire Rojas, he directed the short documentary The Send-Off, also with Ivete. And their short The Rabbit Hunt premiered at Sundance in 2017 prior to competing at the Berlinale and has won over 20 awards, including the Cinema Eye Honor. And in 2017, he and Ivete directed the short Roadside Attraction, which premiered at the Toronto Film Festival. So that's who our incredible directors are of this amazing film, Ivete and Patrick. Ivete and Patrick, thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Jessica. We feel so lucky to have you as part of the Texas film family now.
Oh, that's really sweet. Thank you. Well, I'm happy to be a part of it. And I'm happy that, we were able to do this collective, program. And this is definitely a happy outcome of this very difficult time that we are all going through. So it's so great that we were able to come together to do this. Go Texas film. And you guys are in Austin, so that's exciting. Question ready. You can then, add them to the chat, the YouTube chat, and we'll pull them from there. So I'm gonna get into it, ask my questions, but start thinking about what you wanna ask them, and we'll leave some time for audience questions at the end. So to kick it off, here's my first question. Pahokee is a rare 100% observational documentary without any interviews, narration, or title cards for the introduction of the four main characters, Nakiria, Jacobed, Junior, and BJ. Can you please break down some of the ingredients that go into the style of nonfiction filmmaking? Does it involve spending a lot of time getting to know your subject? Does it involve living with your subjects? How did you build rapport with an entire community and making this, rare, pure observational documentary, which we all know is a very rare thing these days?
Well, I guess it started really in high school. I was lucky enough to have teachers who brought us to work on Habitat for Humanity projects. And in 1998, my mom passed away, and my dad is a New Yorker, and he just, like a lot of Northeasterners, fled to Florida hoping to find a new life, and moved to West Palm Beach and that kind of bizarre culture in West Palm Beach became my new home. And I wasn't very interested in coastal Florida, and started driving out into Central Florida and the Everglades, and looking for ways to get involved in building projects. And I was really interested in photography. So I was taking pictures and volunteering in Pahokee and Belglade, and really getting to know the community, and kind of could feel the complete disconnect. I think in the Northeast, we see racism as, or segregation as, when you grow up in the suburbs, you go to the city and you see a basketball game or you see theater, and then you leave. And what was so shocking to me when I was young is that there could be so much wealth that was completely disproportionately allotted in this county. And so I dreamed of someday being able to tell those stories. And in 2008, I met Ivete, and we went to graduate school, and I studied sustainable architecture, and she got a master's in film at UT. And when we finished, we went back to Palm Beach County and started kind of building on some of the relationships I had, and started working with high school kids.
Yeah, and so I was born in Brazil, grew up in Mexico. I'm half and half. My mom is Brazilian, my dad is Mexican. And I always grew up among like folk culture, like common folk. My family in Brazil were farmers, and so I was really into like common people cultural expressions. And when I started making films, I was making fiction, but I was working with non-actors in real settings. And when Patrick took me to Pahokee, I just saw the cultural richness, and I also felt at home in the sugarcane fields, because Brazil is also a lot of sugarcane fields. And like, because I was making fiction, when watching a documentary and watching interviews that are guided by the directors in a way, I feel some kind of rebelliousness sometimes. I just want to be left alone and left to experience something and left to discover. So we really wanted to make films in that way. When we started watching films when we watched films by the Maysles and Wiseman, and that those were the kind of things that we liked. And so I through the editing, I wanted to make it an experience and never have interviews or anything like that. I think like what you were saying about, you really have to get very, very close, especially in the kind of film that we're doing. I mean,
and how did you guys do that? Like, did you live there for a while, or how did that manifest? Getting close. Yeah.
I mean, you can.
Oh no. In the beginning, it was volunteering in the community and earning people's trust. And I think we never want to go into a community, record and leave, because that has left so many scars. I mean, just in the way the news covers marginalized communities, especially the Glades.
What they call helicopter filmmaking.
And filmmaking. I mean, unfortunately, most people in communities like Pahokee, their interaction with people with cameras is a news crew driving around neighborhoods looking for people to talk to, only finding a person who, might be homeless or out on the street for a particular reason, getting a clip from that person and then broadcasting that, and it's just done incredible damage to communities. So what we did is we earned trust by getting to know people before we even recorded or took any pictures.
Yeah, you would take photos and give it to them. I do want to say, because we made all the shorts before we made the feature, it's like we wouldn't just make a feature film about Pahokee if we hadn't experienced Pahokee for many years before and saw something that was not being shown. You know, saw like the community aspect, the cultural aspect, you know, the closeness in people, the Hispanic community that never gets represented, and really gotten to know the place very well before we wanted to make something there.
Yeah, it sounds like there was a really long gestation, that this was, you know, a relationship that was built over a really long time. I mean, kind of like a decade, right? It sounds like, or maybe even a little longer if you go back to your growing up and kind of spending time there, Patrick, when you were really young, right?
Yeah.
Not that you're not young now.
No, I'm sure we're the same age. You know, in the 90s, the technology for making film was it was terrible. And I mean, we recorded on mini VHS and we edited deck to deck, and it was a mess. So
whole different. Well, speaking of, you know, you mentioned the kind of short films that you had made prior, right, to Pahokee, and you're mentioning, you know, the kind of technology that was available in the 90s. So that kind of dovetails into my next question. Can you share a little bit about making a long form document of a year in a life of these four main characters, young people, a high school community, amidst the short form documentation, some of the characters are creating themselves vis-a-vis social media? You know, this is very different from what you're talking about the 90s, making a film about a high school 10, 20, 30 years ago. What are your thoughts about that? And can you also talk about, you know, the phone video confessionals that the subjects use, and, you know, whether or not they shared that they found agency in these moments of self-narration within your film? Could you talk a little bit about that dynamic? Because that was really interesting, just the social media element and the self-documentation element within the film that the young people, you know, were producing themselves.
Yeah, we didn't want to make a Weissman film where Pahokee felt like an institution that we were studying.
It would have been 5 hours also, but a little Wiseman joke there, you know,
and Pahokee is a radically underfunded school, and they weren't going to have a yearbook, and that's it, you know, almost inconceivable for a lot of coastal high schools. And so we saw the film in some ways as a yearbook for some of the kids and the parents. And you know, with the yearbook, a lot of times, like, kids are the photographers for that project, and so we wanted the kids' voice in the film, and we wanted to give them agency. So we wanted to teach some basic filmmaking skills, and the iPhone is the most accessible tool for telling your own story.
And it's also a tool that they're already using. I mean, so we like if you think about the direct cinema genre, we wanted to make a very intensely personal and intimate film that was going further than just observing. And so in order for the kids to have a voice that went beyond just being themselves in their normal lives, we figured that because they're already using this medium, it's something that's natural to them. And it's like we could sit them down for an interview, but that's stagey. And so the videos flow, you know, and what our only instructions were like, be in the light and don't be, you know, don't be in the wind, and then share whatever you want to share. So we're not guiding them to share what they'll just do whatever they want to share with us, and that's a form of agency. And then me as an editor, I can just edit it in. So that's how we.
Did any of them express interest in like becoming a filmmaker as a result of this experience?
You know, I mean, like you might have seen with your work at the Maysles Cinema, there were there was so little access to arts education.
Mm-hmm.
The art teacher in Pahokee, we spent a lot of time in his classroom,
Mm-hmm.
and he showed us this kiln, and I was like, why do you have a 3-phase kiln? And he said, well, the principal could spend my entire budget with one click. And that was the easiest thing for him to do. So he spent my entire budget on this kiln that is now a shelf. And I think, you know, we don't know those stories that happened to the kids, but it wasn't even an option to afford the technology. Like, kids don't have laptops at Pahokee High. And so it just, there wasn't, a lot of the kids could use GarageBand and create music and create riffs and rap, but there just wasn't, the people really don't understand the technology divide between the rich and poor in our country.
And also, I mean, I think that's something that we don't talk about often in our industry, the unattainability of making films. Like, if you're not from a certain class, like I didn't even think I could make a film until I was maybe in college and I had enough, like I was working and I could afford a camera. Like, my family could never afford not even like a digital camera for taking pictures. So it's like, you can't even fathom that that's something that you can do. Though I think a lot of the kids, music is a little bit easier. And so, like, Junior, for example, started making a lot of beats and stuff on his phone once he had a better phone. And then that takes you to more like wanting to do music videos and stuff like that. So we did meet kids along the way that wanted to make more video work, and we try to help in any way we could. And hopefully, we always thought, like, let's make our impact in the community be positive and always make sure that we're encouraging kids with their creative pursuits as well.
Right. And yeah, I mean, the dynamics that you're talking about are replicated in the way we know these industries have evolved on a larger level. I mean, you see this in the way the music industry has evolved, right, versus the way the film industry has evolved in terms of how diverse it is and the access. And yeah, I mean, when it comes to being an MC or a rapper, you just need a piece of paper and a pen. So that's why it's something that is accessible in that way. So the theme, and we're going to definitely talk a little bit about what you're talking about, Ivete, in terms of like this, question, right, of access and barriers to access. We're going to get into that a little bit in this conversation. So we're going to pivot a little bit in that direction. And this is, kind of a broader question along those lines, and maybe also speaks to the complexity of the film and the complexity of the experience that you're documenting in this film. So, on the one hand, the largely brown and Black majority community that you guys beautifully document in Pahokee is culturally, right, and socially rich, and is self-determined in many ways, right? And also you see that a couple of the four main characters are making this choice to go to historically Black colleges, which is interesting, and continue along a similar path in some respects, and in fact avoid some of the potential alienation and dislocation people of color can experience when they're in more white dominant elite environments, right? Yet there is clear economic inequality, right, that this community is experiencing, will continue to experience, that these young people are going to probably continue to experience. So the question is, what did the parents, the young people, the educators, the community members share with you, if anything, about their experiences around this literal gap between, the cultural self-determination and richness, and the lack of economic, self-determination and richness? Did anybody, share their thoughts about Pahokee being like 40 miles away from West Palm Beach and Mar-a-Lago, which it literally is, right? I'm just wondering, like, what they shared with you about this, their experience of this disconnect between this incredible wealth on one hand, this incredible cultural and social wealth on one hand, and this inequality of economic wealth and self-determination on the other hand.
Yeah, it had played out before we started making films in Pahokee. There's an author named James Patterson and he lives 4 blocks away from Donald Trump. And one day he woke up and he decided, like, I'm from a poor town in New York. Why I live in Palm Beach? Why don't I find a story in the Everglades? And so he went to Belle Glade and Pahokee, and they thought he was making a film. They were so excited. This famous author's here. He's making donations to the library.
Mm-hmm.
He's taking kids from the middle school to his mansion. Like, he brought the principal of Pahokee and kids to his mansion, and they got to see this world for a few hours. And then he made a film about a murder of a convenience store owner, and he kind of had a lot of montage of football and abandoned, dilapidated sugarcane worker housing that is not at all representative of the community. And the community felt totally used because that they were told that he was making a film about a football season and it was going to be on HBO. And it wound up being on the local PBS station. And the majority of the people he interviewed in Belle Glade were homeless, and he staged the interviews in abandoned buildings. And it was absolutely the worst stereotype reinforcing, segregation reinforcing. If you were from Pahokee or Belle Glade, you would see that, and you would feel literally like someone defecated on your community. And if you were living in one of these gated communities or in Palm Beach, you would see Belle Glade, and you would think if you ever went there, you should never get out of your car. And so when we arrived with our to make films in 2014, that had just happened, and people were horrified, and they said, I don't want to be a part of any James Patterson film. And, I was like, we're not with him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in Pahokee, there's definitely a pride for the things that they do. They know they're really good at football. They know that, their kids are beautiful, and when they have prom, it's like they're very proud of these kids and their creativity and the dresses and all that. That is there, but they see themselves like they have made to be felt like outcasts. And I'm just saying this because we made a point of always bringing people from Pahokee with us to the Q&As and to panels, and at one of the panels at Sundance, that's what Big Show announcer said. Like, we've always been treated like outcasts in the county, and they feel the gap in economic gap, but also that treatment of like, you can't go there because it's violent. You can't, it's not a worthy place of visiting even. So to us, we were drawn to this place because of the cultural richness. So we wanted to highlight that
which is so apparent. I mean,
yes.
I mean, yeah.
Totally. And it was also kind of a requirement to the gatekeepers of the community that we were there and that we were going to spend time there and that we were going to do a good job because of things like that had happened before. The other thing I can share with you from these Q&As and this process of making the short films and bringing people to talk about it, which for us is so important, because being Latin American myself, I've always, before we were making films, I'd go to a Q&A and see like filmmakers talking about my community or whatever. And I'd be like, why aren't my people there talking? So I want to repeat what they said and not represent them for them.
Sure.
But I would say with the short film Skip Day, there is an incident at the beach where this girl gets knocked over by this white guy, and he doesn't pick her up. He doesn't, and we show it in the film. And when she came out to New York, actually, to show the film, with us, she said that incident, like, no, a lot of people didn't notice. It's like that, the microaggression things that happen. And it was so hard on me that I decided to go to an HBCU because I did not want to be around people that would treat me like that, you know? So there's definitely a big awareness, and I'm hoping, and I think that we've achieved that with the film, a document that they can be proud of, and and that people can look at the kids and not feel bad for them, but also root for them.
Totally, because I mean that's what I think is one of the most valuable things about the film, that it is really capturing this contradiction, right? That there is this wealth of being in this majority brown and Black community. If you are a brown or Black person, there is this experience there that's really powerful. And it is interesting that a couple of the kids chose to go to HBCU schools, but then it's that very thing, right? Being in that majority Black and brown community that also is what they are punished for economically, if you will. So it's a very complex reality. And I just wondered if the subject shared what they shared around their experience of that, living through that kind of dichotomy of, this incredible wealth on the one hand that, and community, but then this denial of access on the other.
Yeah, so a friend of ours that works there says that like the county of Palm Beach is like, on one side is super, super rich, and then, like it trickles. And then there's like this gap that's all sugarcane fields, and it's also almost like a hand pushing them away from this side,
But also pushing them towards each other. It's like, it's so complicated. It's really complicated,
And they take care of each other. I mean,
that was clear. I mean, that's a really strong community. Like that was super clear. So how did the community of how did they respond to your film and your process and your documentation? And I mean, were there ways that, were there things that you didn't, have access to as, maybe like quote unquote white presenting people, if not being entirely white? I mean, you're Mexican and, so, and from Brazil. So you're not, it's more complicated, right? In terms of your identity, and your identity is very similar to the, Latino characters and Latinx characters that are in the film. But I'm just wondering like how people received the film, and to what extent did, y'all presenting white, like, were there things that you didn't have access to?
We tried, we really made a point not to hover and overstay our welcome with any of the kids or the families, or, I mean, the one of the hardest things with the edit was one of our characters that didn't make it into the film was Nakiria's best friend, and she was a kind of youth leader at a church that was across from the school. And we just recorded the most powerful, beautiful scenes of worship and dancing in the church. And I mean, it would have had to be a 3-hour film. So it would have been a Wiseman, So we really, when the kids were going through super, super rough times, we didn't record it all. And we made more of an effort to help with college applications, or to drive to the outlet mall, or go to Cheddar's, or do something really nice to try and get them out of their environment and just experience something that distracted them a little bit, where we could talk and rationalize what was going on. But access-wise, we stayed away from the classrooms because we didn't want to bring our cameras into classrooms where
be distracting.
Yeah, teachers were
Sure.
understaffed and stressed out, and some of the teachers were driving an hour and a half each way. And the last thing you want is to see two people in your room with a camera.
Sure.
You know, and have to worry if you look good, and if, you know, so it was,
well, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thought.
No, I just.
Sorry. I mean, a lot of what we do as like direct cinema filmmakers is to try to disappear, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little bit harder when you don't look like the people that you're working with. But I think we just embraced it in a way. I mean, I think that people embraced us in another way because we were different. And Patrick got very well known in the community because he has like long hair, and and so it was we tried very hard to make people comfortable with us despite of our differences. Having the experience myself of being, you know, very like having even like a similar background with Kokabed and her family, and maybe not as much with Nigeria and her family. I think that always the goal was for us to like each other as people, for us to have a close relationship that in a certain way that at a certain point they would just let their guard down and let us be there. And once the camera's in front of our face, then we're just a camera.
Yeah. A lot of the things you're saying, you know, which I'm sure you'd be happy to hear, are similar to things that like Albert Maysles would say to me, you know, when I worked with him, the Maysles Cinema for 7 years. And I wanted to ask you, you know, something relatedly. He felt that the camera was like its own living organism, and kind of in direct cinema, the camera guides you. Just curious if you guys feel that way.
I completely agree. I mean, I worship Albert Maysles. Like, I literally go on YouTube and I just search weekly, hoping someone will upload some obscure conversation with him, because I find he's, you know, you can say a sage, or I mean,
he was the sage.
I mean, every time he opens his mouth, I feel, you know, like I have a purpose in life. Like, what we're doing is not crazy.
Yeah, no, it's not.
And
certainly not.
he had this. I mean, he had gone through everything you could go through in his career. He was never broadcast on PBS, and he has this story. Like, he was finally on a plane sitting next to an executive of PBS and telling him about you know, this new film he had, and he sent it to him, and it turned out the executive's father was a door-to-door salesman, and the film made him so depressed that he would never even consider screening it. And I mean, it's when you see someone like Albert Maysles, who went through his career struggling so much to get distribution, and giving everything to cinema, and in the end of his life, community cinema. I mean, it gives us purpose. I mean, it's like,
I'd say what you said just brought a memory to my brain of being in the room, and this is a scene that's in Pahokee, the film. Being in the room with Nigeria when she's changing before the game, and
that's a great scene. That's a great scene. With the corset, where she's putting on the corset.
Where she's putting on the corset.
Yeah, that's a great scene.
It's a very intimate moment, you know, and it was obviously every time I was filming girls changing or whatever. Me. And Nigeria and I had very different backgrounds, right? I mean, she couldn't fathom like what it's like to be in Brazil and then move to Mexico and all that. And I didn't know much about her life until I did. And we became incredibly close. But I think that having the camera there in front of me when she was doing that, she just was like, okay, this is the camera, this is there, and I can just be. I mean, she just forgot that I was there. And when I presented that to her, when it was in the film, we had a lot of conversations about it, you know, and it was like, she's like, I didn't even remember that I put the corset on,
Mhm.
you know, when the camera was there. And then we talked about, you know, like being proud of who you are and showing other girls that, you know, nobody's perfect either.
Yeah.
And then that becomes a good outcome.
Yes.
But there is a magic to having the camera there. And
okay. All right. So we've established that you guys believe in the magical camera theory. Okay. So no, it's a good thing. All right. So we're going to take some audience questions. The first one is from, and I'll ask you a couple of things when we close, but I want to get to these guys because we've been talking for a minute and they deserve our attention. So Marlene wants to know, how did you choose the 4 essential subjects you ended up following? And were there other student stories that did not make the final feature that you want to share?
Definitely. So Nakiria was Chris, who's the star of The Rabbit Hunt and The Send-Off. She was his boyfriend. So she was girlfriend. So we knew her very well. He was going off to college. Nakiria, her junior year, had moved 5 times because her mother lived in Tampa and her father lived on the other coast. And her dream was to be Miss PHS. So she wasn't going to leave Pahokee and this community and this dream she had of being the homecoming queen. And so she was just so strong and so compelling. And so she was our main, she was the first person we filmed in the basis of the original film. And she introduced us to Hookabed. Ivete spent a great deal of time. I mean, the Hispanic community is really invisible in a lot of ways because they live in, the majority of the population live in mobile home parks that are hidden and they're overcrowded and the housing is very dangerous. So we spent a lot of time having dinner with various community members, and it turned out that Nakiria introduced us to Hookabed. And then BJ and his father were such a powerful, you know, father-son relationship. And yeah.
And for us, it was important that the people that we were going to follow had goals. And so, I mean, we were already very close to Nakiria, but we knew that she had this goal. And Hookabed had this goal of being the valedictorian. And she was going to work very hard for it. And also, you know, this incredible richness with the food and the taco shop. And BJ had the goal of winning the championship.
But what about Junior?
And Junior had Let's
talk about Junior.
Yeah, Junior had the goal of raising this kid.
Junior was a senior also?
Yes.
And did Junior graduate?
No.
He didn't graduate that year.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
We actually met Junior through making Skip Day. He's in Skip Day as well.
Did he graduate after the next year?
No. He's still working on his GED.
Okay.
And he's studying to be a medical technician.
Okay.
At a career college. And there's a lot of construction jobs in the Everglades managing the water. So he has a construction job right now.
And his daughter's like 4 now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imaya is 4. And he, Junior is a pure artist. If you saw him skateboard or if you've seen him play drums he can, the songs that he's creating on his phone are.
But that was a big responsibility to have a little one.
Yeah.
And that age at high school. I mean, that's no joke.
No, not at all.
Yeah. His love for Imaya is so intense. And
that came through.
Yeah. And it gives him meaning, to his life. I mean, he does go through hard times.
Oh, for sure. But no, he obviously loves her. And what about the other, what are they all doing? It sounds like you're in touch with everybody. What is everybody up to? Like, what is going on with Pahokee? What's going on with Pahokee High School? Are they having a graduation this year? Is it going to be virtual? Like, shout out to the class of 2020 everywhere. Our hearts go out to you, class of 2020. Shout out to parents of kids in the class of 2020. Shout out to the whole class of 20, college, high school, everybody, man. Shout out to you right now.
Yeah.
One of the we always go to the graduations at Pahokee, and one of the seniors this year started a Facebook group where people can adopt a high school senior from Palm Beach County. So people kind of put up a photo of themselves, a little background, what they've done extracurricularly, their GPA, and you can log on to that group and adopt a senior, and that you can send them a check, or you can do whatever you feel inspired to do. So so the kids, Nakuria, I think what you said is very interesting about going to HBCUs. I think when you've grown up in a community that is Black and brown, it's very, very difficult to go to a college that's predominantly white. Because when everybody's in it together, and whether you're Mexican or Haitian or Jamaican or African American, you all have a relationship with agriculture if you're living in Pahokee, whether an uncle works at the factory or brother works in the field, or your grandparents worked in the fields. Like, it really bonds you. And so when the kids, we've known kids that have gone to white colleges in upstate Michigan to play football, and experienced, literally 5 kids went to upstate Michigan to play football from the Glades, and all of them were home within 2 months of the first semester.
Are we sure it wasn't just the cold though? No, just kidding.
Yeah, it hadn't gotten cold yet.
That's like a really different. Yeah, that scene with the Harvard ladies was pretty chilly when they're at the college fair. It was like, whoa.
No, I mean that's the ability of being close with the people you're recording to see what they encounter in the outside world. That scene shook me to my core. Because,
so what are they all up to? Like, you guys are in touch with them. So I just want to, I want to get to some more audience questions. So I just want to make sure.
Hokebed, is in,
she's in the
University of Florida,
and she's in his like Latinx sorority, and
nice.
they're very proud of having like the best GPAs, and so that's helpful.
Is she a junior? She's a junior, or what year is she?
She's a junior.
Yeah.
BJ is a starting center at FAMU, and he's a captain. They were like 13-2 last year.
Oh, wow.
And he's getting great grades, and I mean, he obviously would love to go to the NFL.
Right.
And but he and some of the guys you saw on stage at signing day have started a nonprofit to help kids from the Glades understand the process of visiting colleges before you go. A lot of kids in communities like Pahokee are not able to do something that other kids in the suburbs take for granted, which is visiting schools and seeing a dorm room and seeing.
And even what happens when you do get to visit, and how sometimes you're profiled when you're visiting a school, and the way you're treated, even when you do get an opportunity to visit a school, that's an issue too for kids that don't fit the mold. And what about Miss Almost Pahokee High School? How's she doing?
She went to community college in Tallahassee,
right?
And she had to work at Wendy's at the same time, and be self-sufficient, and that was really hard. And it also got her questioning like why she wanted to be a nurse. And so she decided to stop and concentrate on having a good job. And she has a good job as a security person in a big company, and she has benefits and everything. And she moved to Clearwater to be close to her mom, and she just bought a car, and she lives by herself, so she's like feeling super independent, and we're super proud of her too.
Whoa, that just like reminds me of how much time has passed and what like 3 years means in, your life when you're that age. Like so many, they've inevitably gone through so many changes since they made this film and have grown up so much. And so it sounds like you guys are like in touch with everybody and stay in touch, and we'll stay in touch. Cassie has the question, is asking, a good portion of the film seems to be dedicated to the football season and its impact on the roles of the main subjects. Was that an intentional choice? If not, how did you choose to allocate time?
It was very hard because we recorded all the football games for the reason that they kept winning, and we'd say, well, if they lose, I think we want to capture that to see how the kids react to adversity.
Yeah.
And they just never lost.
Yeah.
And so football was a place where the community came together. It was very important to Nakuria. It was very important to Junior. And it was obviously very important to BJ.
Yeah, it's like one of the ways that kids can access a college education or another life. Mm-hmm. So that was really important from the start, even though we're not sports people. Mm-hmm. But we saw football also as a cultural expression, mm-hmm. as a ritual, and as a place mm-hmm. that a community comes together mm-hmm. To love the kids, mm-hmm. you know? And so it was like, to us, we saw it as that system where everybody had a mm-hmm. different role.
Totally.
And we could always go back to that and give the space to the cheerleaders and to the band. And I mean, that drum off with Junior was
totally
so important, and so that's how we filmed
mm-hmm.
it. Even we were very conscious from the beginning. Mm-hmm. Patrick was saying, we can't make this like a ESPN thing. Mm-hmm. We're gonna do it very differently. And so he was on the field because he's faster, mm-hmm. and I was with the cheerleaders and the public mm-hmm. and Junior and the band, and that's how we. Yeah. But we didn't know it was going to be the monster that it became because are so good.
Yeah, and I mean, shout out to sports documentation, where actually a lot of innovations were made around camera and camera work for documentary film. I don't think people realize how much the sports space actually has really influenced nonfiction film. A lot of the innovations that that are employed come from, covering football. But yeah, I think I love the way you guys really, captured the whole ecosystem of the band and the cheerleaders and everybody, for sure. And we are, this is Texas after all, the land of Friday Night Lights. So this is a world also. There's a lot of, it's super relevant, right, to the Texas audience. And this is such a familiar world, and it's such a big part of life in Texas as well. So let's see if we get like one or two more in here, and then we'll let's see. This is a good one. C.H. Smith is asking, how long did it take to complete the film from initial inception?
Sure. So we moved to Pahokee in August of 2016. There were a lot of permissions we had to get from the high school, so that took a month. There was a change of principals that took another month, and so we recorded from September through the end of May, graduation. Mm-hmm. And I think when we heard Jochebed's speech, we really felt like there was an end to the film. Mm-hmm. And then it was a year of editing.
Yeah, I mean, a year and a half of editing.
Yeah.
And we premiered in January of 2019.
Yeah, we started editing in September of 2017. So we
premiered at Sundance, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And we brought all 4 kids in Big Show with us to the premiere.
Yeah, so I mean, if you think we're still going with the film, so it's been about 4 years where it's been the center of our life for 4 years.
And
now you're about to have a new center of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. People in Pahokee used to say to me all the time, like, why don't you have any babies?
Yeah.
And there were so many babies in Pahokee.
Yes.
There were so
Yeah.
cute.
And now you're gonna have one soon.
Now
Yay.
we're gonna make a baby. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's so yeah, that's a good, so I guess I think we should wrap up, but two questions. Well, this I think is maybe, I mean, this is for both of you, but I think especially for you, Ivete, based on what you were sharing about your own experience, like, are there any thoughts that you have about how the access to opportunity can be opened up? Things that you think programmers, producers, exhibitors, distributors that maybe on this, budding filmmakers, people in the filmmaking community, things that we need to be thinking about, tactics, practices, things, intentional things that we can do, and especially in this moment, right, where we're so aware of inequality, we're so aware of the brown and Black bodies and working class bodies on the front lines, right?
Right.
Keeping us all fed right now, keeping us all safe, right? Putting themselves in danger. So I want to know, like, if you have particular thoughts around that, and things that we should be thinking about to open up, because it's something I'm pretty invested in too. How do we open up access to opportunity? And then the last question is, what do you guys have happening next? What's next for you? I know you just finished shooting a nudist colony film, nudist colony in Florida. I want you to tell us about that. So yeah, those are the two like closing questions for you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that the initial thought that I have is that we have to admit that unconscious bias is real. I think we captured it a lot in our film. You were saying the Harvard scene, and we need more gatekeepers of like women and of color who understand the complexities of minorities, that don't look at us as a swath of like, we need minority and they can understand. And we need to collaborate together. It's not about erasing the white people
for sure, moving
aside and coming in, but working together. I think that diversity in a team is incredibly rich for creativity, and that's why our films are good. Because I'm a woman, he's a man. I'm an immigrant from another culture, and that mixture of things make things great.
Right.
And so that's really important. I think that women and people of color, there's now grants that help us. There's communities coming together, but it's still, the industry is still the industry, and they choose who they're gonna spend a bunch of money on PR for an Academy campaign, for example. Right. And that, I think it's even worse in fiction filmmaking, where it's a man.
But that just got opened up in a very interesting way. I don't know if you guys saw that now qualifying cities include Atlanta, Miami, Chicago. That's really, exciting in terms of the way it opens things up, and not having this kind of coastal elitism around, you have to show your films in New York or LA to qualify for an Oscar.
Yeah.
So that's because really there's geographic issues too, right? There's the kind of geographic bias too, I think, for sure. That has to
definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in the middle of Texas, and we're still, Austin is a film hub, but it's still not, taken as seriously as New York or LA, and we refuse to move to New York or LA.
Yeah. Well, good for you. So no, that's a great answer, and for sure. So gatekeepers, let's diversify gatekeepers.
Put money into women. Put money into filmmakers, not just grant money, but PR money.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Like Academy's campaigns are huge, PR things. So.
Yeah, and we're talking about broadening things. Everybody can come with. Everybody can join. We're all gonna do this together. Everybody can come with us. But yeah, we're talking about broadening the access, right? So certainly not diminishing anybody. And so what's next for you guys? Tell us about the nudist colony film and what's next. And as we close.
So when we were living in Pahokee, we would drive to West Palm Beach to load up on groceries at Costco. And on a Friday night, I was loading the car up, and a lady, really nice lady in her 60s, came up to me and said, "Hey, we're having a drum circle and a bonfire at the Nudist Resort tonight, and it's free for anybody from the outside, and you should come." And I thought, wow. And you know, having long hair in Pahokee was great because it differentiated me from the police or you know, some of the teachers or authority figures that were white. And you know, I hope that my presence never intimidated anybody in Pahokee. But so the other end of it was, you know, we were invited to a nudist resort. We didn't go that night, but we went and took a tour, and it was a place that just felt like the Garden of Eden, you know, in the same way Pahokee does naturally.
How far is it from Pahokee?
About 20 minutes. It's just on the other side of the sugarcane field. So it's in an area called Loxahatchee, which is where a lot of these tiger people are from.
Oh, right.
So there's a place called Lyon County Country Safari there. And there's a bunch of really wild lion people, and it's like kind of unincorporated anti-development. And there was just a kind of a nudist colony that had been there for almost 50 years.
Right.
And we spent some time visiting, and you know, it wasn't like Pahokee where we had been invested in the community for you know 10 years, but they welcomed us in, and we spent a few months earning trust. And
they watched Pahokee too.
We showed them Pahokee, and we filmed in a very similar manner with two families, and just it will be a film where we learn about naturism and nudism and the human body and self-acceptance,
and another kind of closed community in a way, which is interesting.
Yeah, very close.
Yeah, different
type of culturally rich community.
Yes, culturally rich as well. Yeah, well, maybe there's a Florida trilogy here. I don't know.
I love Florida.
Maybe there's going to be a third. Well, we're going to look for that. Do you have a title for that film, or are you still working on it? Okay, well, we're going to look for that. It's very exciting. Naked people, always a thrill. I'm sure it's deeper than that, but you know, hey, you got to bring him in however you can. So that's great. It's so great talking to you guys, talking to you, Ivete and Patrick. Thank you so much for your beautiful film. Everybody on this Q&A, you can still watch Pahokee. The directions are on YouTube, so please watch it if you haven't already. And you know, again, guys, thanks so much for making this film. Thanks so much for doing this Q&A and doing all the incredible outreach that you're doing around it, especially with the characters and going around with them, you know, virtually and in person. Thank you, audience, for joining us. And
thank you.
And stay safe, y'all. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
And support all of our nonprofits in Texas that support filmmakers, like the Cinema Arts Society, and the Austin Film Society, and the
we
Texas Theater.
The Texas Theater. Yes, all of our partners: Violet Crown, Texas Theater, Austin Film Society, Houston Cinema Arts, and Rice Cinema. Go Rice! Happy 50.
Culture is essential.
Yes, for sure. Now more than ever. And again, shout out to the class of 2020.
We're so lucky to have you, Jessica. Thank you.
Well, we're lucky to have you guys. So, yay! All right. Well, I'll see you guys soon in person one of these days. Okay. All right. Bye, everybody. Have a good night. Be safe.
Take care.
Bye. Thanks. Bye.